Good morning and welcome to Coffee Time with Kauffman, the comfortable place to talk about women's leadership. Today we are talking to Eugenia Rivero about high energy, high passion, and high rewards. Hi, Eugenia.
Hey, good morning, everybody.
Eugenia is a strategic initiative senior analyst for WestRock Company. She is a chemical engineer by degree and a strategist by choice. She is passionate about data-driven decisions. She is a Lean Six Sigma Green Belt certified and working towards Black Belt. But before we get into high energy, high passion, and high rewards of women's leadership with Eugenia, my name is Maria Kauffman, and I'm a life coach. And today I am drinking my usual dark roast. What are you drinking, Eugenia?
I am drinking cold brew with whipped cream to make Friday more bearable.
Awesome. That definitely is a pretty good help.
For sure.
So Eugenia, tell us a little bit about maybe some of your earliest memories of school, what it might have been like for you, any early signs of genius that stood out in the math or science realm. What do you remember from your earliest years?
Honestly, I remember, if we go back, I don't know how far you want me to go, but if I go back to grade school, I just remember being a super hyperactive kid that just kind of couldn't wait to leave the classroom to go play soccer or run or whatever it was. So I would just zoom through whether it was homework, class assignment, or whatever, and then I would just want to be done. And I always noticed that for math specifically, I don't know if I would say genius, but I had a different my brain thought one way and most people thought another way. So the teacher would teach us one way to do one problem, and then I would just kind of look at it and be like, I know it kind of takes too long from kind of my priorities of the day, which means playing. So I'm just gonna do it this one way. I'm gonna get the right answer. And every single time, teachers would be like, Eugenia, if you do that, you're not gonna get any credit, like any partial credit if you get it wrong. I was like, yeah, then I won't get it wrong. So of course, that did result in some B's that couldn't have been easily A's, just because my thought process was not as written down or whatever. But I almost feel like that challenged my brain to kind of be even more careful as I did. If I did a creative solution, then that also meant that I needed to commit to that solution, but also commit to excellence. So that was a lot of fun, just to realize that I was we're just a really hyper kid, unfortunately or fortunately. Uh,
Yeah.
Most of my coworkers say that they could use 1/8 of my energy, and I probably could use less of my energy. But I definitely, I think it's part of the fun part of I guess being me and just having too much energy for my own good, and then making sure I exercise daily so that I get that energy off and have some for work.
Right. I like the balance there. And I love the comment of just the kind of like that freedom of just being yourself and understanding how to navigate this world where, okay, I got to do the homework and then, make sure that that is an accelerated path so I can get to the fun stuff.
Right, for sure.
But that's a pretty good awareness too. I do remember as well myself, kind of like, I just want to get to the answer. And that whole showing your work thing it felt overrated. But you had a little bit of perspective like, I'm going to commit to this.
Yes. You would think that it would be the other way around when I would just from getting A's, I started getting 1B or whatever. And then I was like, well, overall, the whole class, I'll probably get an A. So it doesn't really matter if I trip and slip a couple of times. I just need to commit. So my teachers, I'm sure, loved my loved my persistence. I hated it. So I think that's most people. You love me or you hate me. There's no in between, and I'm good with it.
And I'm good with it.
Yes.
I love it. So you're kind of seeing yourself this way. So how did that then translate, or what was it like, getting into more the high school realm?
For sure. I guess we did have a different kind of path, my family and I, because we did move from a different country. So we moved from Mexico City and then we moved into Houston, Texas. Texas is actually very diverse, so that was exciting. But the school we actually went to was 99% white. So there was no, almost no negligible diversity. So it was really you learn English or you don't have friends. So I think that was a weird transition. So I don't know if we could kind of stay based on that what my experience would have been for a normal like same country kind of person. But what I could say is that even when we first moved here the first year, I was still getting hundreds in math, just because I was like, numbers I can do. Tell me the word problems, and I knew enough English to be like, I think they're asking for this and stuff like that, and then I'll just guess. So some problems were not great, but I thankfully my other stuff kind of took over and compensated for the lack of English that I knew. I do remember science. I actually went from loving science to hating science. So I resorted to memorizing the book. Would not recommend to most people. I don't know anything now.
No.
But did I know the words? I absolutely knew the words and definitions for biology, because me and biology were just not one. So that kind of short-cutted any ideas of wanting to be a doctor very early in my high school career. But definitely, I don't think I would have, like, I think my character was just better for engineering and kind of like that. Just it's a little more fun in my eyes. Not that there's anything wrong with doctors.
Definitely nothing wrong with doctors.
Yeah.
So you like science. It was just a little bit of your personal situation that introduced, an unexpected obstacle.
Sure.
That might have maybe shifted that direction, but math was a solid.
Right. Yeah, it was almost like the comprehension of the problems for science that I could learn words, but I didn't know what they meant all at once. But yeah, absolutely. So it's all about being adaptable and just figuring out what works, and then at least just being happy that you like at least one subject consistently. So.
Right. Well, it's interesting you say that, because even for me, I was born and raised in America, only know English, but I always felt, I'll say, safer in the number realm.
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. So interesting. Very interesting. So, okay. So now you're in high school. And you're going through a bit of I'll say a transition, learning English and trying to make friends, still being energetic.
Yes, very energetic. So we convinced my parents to let us join the cross-country team, basketball team, primarily because they were in different seasons, so that we just wanted to play basketball in the fall, and then summer we wanted to run in the summer, just to stay in shape for basketball, because we loved it. Unfortunately, I'm like 5'3", so my career was probably not long lasting in basketball, but I absolutely loved it for the time it lasted. And then cross country was just a perfect combination of like perseverance, endurance, and like also like kind of like you're on your own. So like if you're in a race and you can pretend that you're breathing hard and you can pretend that you can't do it anymore, but only you truly knows whether you're lying to yourself or you're truly pushing yourself to the greatest extent. So I think it was a great life lesson for me.
Wow, that's pretty powerful.
Thank you.
Pretty powerful. Once again, in those young years, you're having some pretty interesting perspectives that I would say are not maybe necessarily the norm. Today, I would look at that and say, this is the seedlings of some leadership potential. Awesome. But were you kind of aware of that perspective, or maybe even your leadership skill development that early?
Honestly, I think I want to thank like my twin sister and my older sister and my mom, and everybody in my family kind of was like, I was very like almost like a logic person, and I just love and I always made like older friends, and I like always hung out with my parents or my sisters, and it just kind of, I think, helped bring in kind of like an outside perspective. Is if you go to your boss and he asks the same questions every time that you come up with a problem or a solution or stuff like that, and he's just trying to make sure that it's safe, it's viable, it's efficient, anything like that, you kind of start learning how that brain works. And I think that I did kind of know early on that I was kind of an old soul in the sense that I always wanted to find a positive perspective. So even if I was like really struggling, I took that as an opportunity. Like I think one race I ended up being in varsity in high school, which was I was super proud of, because I never thought I actually do it. But then when I realized is that I never did that because I didn't believe in myself and nobody else did for me. So you really had to commit to saying like, well, I want to be and I believe that I can. And the only thing that can get me there is training, discipline, and all that. So it's almost that like, it's almost like you realizing that if you don't change your mindset to something that like your mindset and your belief in yourself, there's really nobody just wants to pay you more money or make you be more successful. So like I do think to an extent, yes, for sure. I kind of knew it was an old soul, but I think I definitely kind of need to thank my family, my twin to give, because I'm very logical. Not that she isn't, but she's more in the very sociable, like very exciting, like, like we just come like kind of opposites, although we look exactly the same. So it's really fun just to have that balance in my life, to have that engineering brain, but also that excitement and that, hey, you should go to parties. My parents used to pay me to go out in college. I had a full-time job and I also went to
What?
college. Yeah. So sometimes my parents would be like, you have been studying for 11 hours. And I was like, I understand, but I have to finish all my homework because then I work the next 2 days and I'm not gonna have time to do all my homework for the week. So I'm just gonna get it all done once. So I'm instead of a procrastinator, I was the opposite. I would just do everything at once, once I had the energy, and then just kind of like leave it for the week. So my parents would be like, "No, you really think you should go to a party with your sisters?" But
Wow.
so
Wow.
it was
Yeah, I
kind of
was
fun.
wondering, so you're more, maybe the math type.
Yeah,
It sounds like your twin is a little bit more social. You
right.
both sound like you're a little bit high energy and maybe high
Yeah.
passion. Would you,
Sure.
is
Yeah, for
that
sure. I think it
just
was
in different?
like everybody met us and we were like just like happy twins, like just talking to each other and like kind of riling each other up. And if people were negative, I think one of the funny story that I would say that me and my twin sister, even though we're not like super athletic, our parents don't know where we decided that to like sports because they don't necessarily like sports. Uh, well, they were the best, like they're the best parents of the world. We had told them that we wanted to do basketball, and it was kind of like a little bit of a traveling team because in Mexico it's kind of hard to get anywhere. So it just takes a lot of time. But they would go to every weekend. They would travel with us, and then they would take us to basketball games. And we were terrible. Like we went from not having a basketball team to convincing our school that we should have a basketball team for women. And
Nice.
then it was just kind of a mess because we didn't know how to dribble the ball. We did like one. I think we lost, like we were about to lose like 50-0, and the girls in the other team gave us the ball. Like they literally gave us the ball because they just felt so bad, and they like literally were teaching us how to dribble, how to throw. Because this was our first game. I think we had 3 practices. Well, the point is, Angie gets the ball. She passes it to me. I score a basket. We are all super happy. The other coach tells us that we just scored for the other team, and then
Oh,
we're like, you would think that my reaction would be like, oh no. My twin sister was like, we scored for the other team. So we're just here cheering for that. And then they're like, would you like to make a score in your basket? And we're like, yeah, that'd be good. So it
that
was
would
just
be pretty
great. Kind
cool.
of like, it's like you can't kill or happiness no matter what you do. So
Well, yeah, because we're talking about high energy, high passion, and high rewards. So that reward perspective of maybe all that you're doing along the way seems to be almost natural to you.
yeah, for sure. Like, yeah, take what you can when you're doing it, even if you're having a bad race. Concentrate. Like, I'm proud that I'm finished. Like, I actually think I learned that recently from one of my good friends, Emily. She said, "Have what I'm doing my first marathon in January. Super excited but nervous about it. Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you. But so I was telling her that I was like, training's kind of rough, and then she's like, yeah, no kidding. That's why not most people will decide to do a marathon. But she told me to have different levels of goals. Like have I'm gonna finish. Like that's the base level, right? I'm just gonna
right.
finish. And then we're gonna be happy because I finished.
Yeah,
Then I am gonna finish at like below 4 hours, which I in my brain I think I can do from my performance. And then the next level would be like I'm gonna do 3:45, and then the next level will be 3:30, and then top of that, which would be like top goal, highest goal would be qualify for Boston and do three less than 3:30, right? So in that way, if you set yourself for that, then even if you're having a really bad race and halfway through the race you're just not have it in it, you still have something to look for and something to be excited and be proud of. And like she said, even if I crawl to the finish line, it will be my personal best because I haven't done that before, right? So it's just
Yeah.
kind of like just perspective and just being kind to yourself and also being excited for the journey.
Oh my gosh, that is so powerful in so many ways. So when you were talking about that cross country experience of even just challenging yourself,
Right,
and that you can't even lie to yourself because you're going to know,
right,
whether you're really pushing yourself or, whether this is real for you or not,
for
right?
sure. Yeah.
So that's pretty powerful, but then it also must be a very sustainable, like in all of these opportunities, I'm going to constantly be getting rewards.
Right, exactly, exactly. It's almost like you're you're not. I'm not saying that I don't want to apply for Boston. The only way that I'm gonna do is by setting that goal and like saying it out loud, right? And I think I hadn't signed up for a marathon so long because qualifying for Boston has been a goal of mine for ever since I've been running, which is when we moved here about 10, 15 years ago. So it's been a while since I wanted to qualify for Boston. But the problem was that I was like, I can't qualify if I don't run marathons. But me not signing up for the marathon was just like kind of like a hesitation towards I don't actually know that I can do it. And then changing that into like, wait, why don't I just do a step ladder of goals? And then I can just like, even when you run a race, like I don't tell myself that I'm running a half marathon when I do. Because if not, like we're too good at math. Like you probably know that. It's like
Right, the logical
I'm like
side.
10%, 12%, 13. Like we're just gonna kill ourselves like if we keep at that mindset. But if I'm do like, okay, like I'm like I made some progress. That's exciting. Like we're doing so good. Like stuff like that. It's just like you said, sustainable, exciting, and even for your life, it's just so transferable to anything. Like for work, hey, like you want to get certification, okay, maybe that seems unreachable. Let's try 50% of the score for now, and then we'll kind of move up from there and then just progressively get better.
Right. And it's kind of got some forethought in that I'm going to do this challenging thing, but I'm also like basically always going to get a reward.
Right, right, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. So your parents obviously sound very supportive.
Yes.
They've got these children that are almost, self-sustaining and, kind of go-getters. At that high school, making that decision to get into a career, what was that like for you?
So I definitely I think as my high school career kind of like finishing. So my last year in high school, I kind of realized that I did like science, but I didn't. That it was more of a language barrier originally. But thankfully, like my English education before moving here was enough that I think everything started clicking whenever we moved here. So by the time we were in senior, I finally starting to feel comfortable with the language. My character of being outgoing is coming out and everything like that. So instead of an elective class, I actually took two science classes. So I took physics pre-AP and then chemistry AP. Just to like learn more about chemistry, and chemistry had an incredible set of labs. Like we made ice cream, we made like we made kind of like fireworks. We didn't like actually make fireworks, but it was more like when you burn the metals and then they shine the light that the firework is, so you would learn which one does what and stuff like that. So we would actually have Saturday classes for high school for chemistry. We had one of the top programs in the state, and it
Like
was
like it was mandatory, or was that like an optional?
it
Like,
was optional. I'm
oh,
just a
okay,
happy nerd.
awesome.
I'm just a happy nerd. But so, yeah, so we would
That
go
sounds
there, and
exciting though too.
no, it was so much fun, and because it was almost like I almost wish that this AP class was the one that they taught to to students in the
Oh.
obviously I think for safety reasons or something like that. It's just a more manageable eight people kind of environment. But I just remember like just being so passionate about it, and I kind of like was logical enough to know that hey, I do want to do like some sort of chemistry, something like that. But in my head, I was like, that's not going to make me enough money unless I'm like a PhD. And then even then, that's still risky. I know there's a lot of people that are successful, so I'm not trying to bash on that. But it's almost like for me, did not seem like the path I wanted to take because I didn't see myself working on a lab long term. So I wanted to take that and maybe see like, oh, what are scalable things that I can do with chemistry? And the best thing that came to mind was chemical engineering. And I think like I mean I think I hit it right on the spot. I still love it even though I don't practice it. Like uh, college was incredible. I do wish that we had more of a mindset for professors rather than to weed out people that are not good enough. More to inspire people to be good enough.
Ooh, say more about that.
Yeah, so I mean, college was rough. Like I said, I didn't have any background. Like even though my grandfather was an engineer, my dad is like an architect, and my mom is like a teacher. So like engineering and especially Mexican culture, unfortunately, it's a little it's kind of coming up with the times now. But at first, it was not as well known for women to be in engineering and stuff like that. So if here's not diverse, Mexico was even less so diverse in terms of women for engineering. So I never had thought about something like that. So we show up to my first day of engineering class and they're talking about digesters. I'm like over here, like, I have no idea what this is. Distillation columns, like, right? Like everything's going over my head. I'm kind of overwhelmed. And I get a 30 on my first test. Like
Yeah,
I
right.
literally get a
Well,
30. But
yeah.
unfortunately, this professor, for whatever reason, only had 3 tests per year. And this was one of them. So
Yeah.
I basically just shot myself in the foot really badly.
Oh,
And it was kind of disappointing because I was like, I know that I know what I have what it takes. It just means that my learning curve is just going to be, it has to be really steep for me to be able to achieve like completing this course. And this was already a hard course.
yeah.
So I just kind of was like very disappointed. I went to talk to a professor just to see how could I overcome the gap. But unfortunately, this professor said, I don't think you should be an engineer. So it was almost like, okay, cool, that was super helpful. Again, I am like very sarcastic and like almost
Yeah,
like,
not funny. Like,
no, yeah.
dude, like, come on. Like, I'm reaching out for some help here, and that's the best you have.
Right. But like almost like defending myself. Like I feel like that's how I keep my mindset like level by just being like, I'm not gonna take bullies. And I don't think like and
Yeah.
like yeah, I think I asked something like, what do you mean by that? And like, like and then like almost like he said it again and
Challenge
I was
them.
like, cool, if you wanna commit to being such a bad influence,
Yes.
then I'm just gonna give you what I need. So unfortunately, that was kind of that. So I just decided, cool, I'm just gonna look over. So I got 100 in the next test, and I like signed it and I gave it back to him, and I just kind of walked away. So and then I almost
Whoa,
like
whoa, whoa. Oh my gosh. Okay, so talk about high energy, high passion, high reward. What happened in between?
I mean, I just sat down and I just said, fine, we're just gonna become best friends. And unfortunately, I don't learn by reading; I learn
Okay.
by listening. So I made friends with the smartest people in the class that were doing really well, and then I would just kind of like be like, talk to me, and like I feel like a lot of people, as we grow older, we are scared of asking dumb questions. But I am the queen of dumb questions. Like I do think you have to know the place, right? Like if you're in a class at this like 10 minutes before the class finishes, and the professor's like, anybody have more questions? Please don't come up with your 30 page questions then, because people are gonna hate you for delaying the class departure. But if you have if you made an attempt to really find a solution for your answer, you can't find a solution, and then you exhausted your resources, then like don't be afraid to ask that question, because while it might seem stupid, like there is something there that might not have been as clear. So a lot of the times that I asked something in class or I asked something to my peers, it was interesting to find out that like a lot of people felt that way, but not a lot of people were brave enough to show that it wasn't clear. And the professor one time was like, oh, I've been teaching like that for 10 years, but I see where the confusion comes from. But I'm like, interesting. This is kind of concerning, but
Interesting.
interesting. So
Cool. Okay.
it's kind of like that, yeah.
So you used a little bit of that sociability, because
Right.
I imagine too, like, whenever you talked about those early years where you just, sat down, got the work done so you can go out and play and really have the real fun, that there, and probably maybe even your twin that was a little bit more sociable, you had those social skills and just relied on that greater community,
Right.
and sought those relationships. What was that like for you to maybe even, were you already friends with these people? Was it natural for you then to be studying?
Yes and no. I do think since my character and like my friend group was just a little more outgoing and more. I had a lot of friends from the business group. I was part of like a like a club or something that we just like do play games and stuff like that. So I do think like I did have like a different group. So I did kind of like pivot it a little bit in the sense of not to benefit myself, but also felt like there was some benefit that I could do because I at least I was like I knew what the homework was and I knew like what to do, and most of the times I could figure it out on my own, or I wasn't afraid to like try to multiple times and spend a lot of time with my homework. So I felt like I could provide some value in the sense that at least I was like level headed enough to like everything that I learned it well, but I also like that made that gap of I just needed someone to kind of like voice over like thought processes because some
Yeah.
of the questions were really tricky. I think I remember we had a half a pipe, like we had to do a problem of half a pipe in fluid dynamics, and the forces kind of cancel each other out. Like so, like the worst part that we were trying to calculate all this, and then one of us thinks like I don't know, I think it might cancel out, but that seems stupid. And then someone is like, no, I think you're right. And then I'm like, okay, so like we commit to like putting us here. We're gonna hit zero in the homework if we like we don't make any calculations and stuff like that. It's like no, like maybe we should show how we think that everything cancels out and it's just like the gravity of the pipe actually just being in there. So as long as it's holding in place, you're good. And I was like, I mean, again, I don't remember what the exact premises of the problem was, but the point that we committed to it, we just kind of gave some work of what we thought had happened. And then they're like, oh yeah, there's 4 people. Like they're the only ones that got it right, but everybody was working individually. So they missed out on the
The,
teamwork of
the
like
group thing.
thinking about it, like almost validation, because I feel like maybe you can come up with it on your own, but maybe you wouldn't have feel confident enough to put it down on the paper if you didn't have that like I think that that's logic. I like talking through it, all that. So I think the sense of community was key, especially because you get stuck in a problem where you don't know one subject. You're in chemical engineering, you're high level enough that there's not a lot of people out there that can help you. And then even engineers in the workforce, they're
Yes.
not actually doing the calculations themselves by hand. So, or maybe they are. There's some few of them that are doing it by hand. But I mean, when I was a chemical engineer, I forgot all my everything I learned, and I was just like use the logic that you learn, and that's it.
Yeah.
So I do think that that would have helped the community kind of made a whole step change.
Right. Well, it sounds like making that pivot was rather strategic because you were
Right.
looking for that success. So
Right.
this is interesting, right? And it sounds like also from, those early days where you didn't want to show work, that by the time you get to college and you're in this situation, you're seeing the value at least on showing that work and following through with at least the thought process.
Right. Yeah, it's almost like you learn like it's okay to be the way that you are as long as it doesn't impede your progress or partial credit for that reason, right? At that point, it's like if you can't beat the system, play the system. So while it's not necessary to always show your work, in some situations where, I mean, at work currently, I always act as if I'm going to get fired or I'm going to change to a new role because you never know what's going to happen. So like, I definitely want, whenever I walk my boss through, whether it's a workflow in Alteryx, which is like a coding platform, or I'm just showing him something different from model. Like it's so much easier for myself to go back and look at like this is why I did and this is my assumptions that were surrounding that. So it's almost like I'm making a self presentation But it's also always very powerful, because by the time that someone says, hey, this is really good, we should show it to your boss or my boss or whatever it is, then everything is documented. So at the same time, it's like, yes, it's okay to be yourself, but be self-aware enough to recognize where something needs improvement. And obviously I recognized that if I did wanted to get a decent grade, was I needed to get as many extra points. There's nothing about getting 100 in this. I mean, it's not common to get 100 in engineering school. So.
Yeah. Good for you. What a statement. I love it. So then obviously you're figuring out how to be successful through college. What was college to career like for you?
So college was rough. So like I said, I think we're still having I'm coming out of my shell. So like I am being more of myself, but I'm still very self-conscious about my accent and stuttering, like anything like that. I just really did not feel as comfortable in my own skin. So I kind of the transition was kind of rough. I did start consulting. I did process safety and engineering consulting for my first 2 years of college. I unfortunately worked too much because I was trying to pay for school in the process. So I did fail one class. So that set me back kind of like a year. It's almost like a year and a half, because they offered it every other year. And then it was only like the fall semester. So I missed it. I missed the whole thing. But I kind of you take those failures and you say, like, what can I learn from this? So I realized that part of what I lacked in the beginning, which was showing my work and communicating what I did, that was kind of what was going to prevent me from being successful in the future. So I decided to sign up for business classes in my time that I had extra, that I was given, or that I gave myself extra. And then I did a business minor, and I was surrounded by people that were just extraordinary at communicating and extraordinary about selling themselves. And so just like you said, like, if I think a great saying is like, your wealth and your happiness is the average of the 5 people closest to you. So the same thing in this one. It's almost like I didn't want to be the smartest person in the room. I wanted to be the opposite, so that I could become like them. So then I would just be like, I would be elevated. So I honestly think, like, I'm not, like I said, I'm obviously showing this in a recorded session. And I said that in interviews again, because yeah, it took me 6 years actually to graduate college, and I'm not necessarily super proud of it, but I'm also not embarrassed, because it's kind of like my path once I got out of college was so much accelerated than my other peers, that I think it kind of made up for itself, and it just reconciliated in the sense that I don't look back. I'm thankful for what I learned in the process, and I don't think I would have set myself back a year and a half and taking business classes if I wasn't the case. But during those 2 years, we actually were in this competition for finance association. So you had to propose we had to propose projects to uh, surrounding energy consumption, energy use, and just make it more environmentally friendly. I'm blanking out completely on our two projects, on our first project, but my second project for a team was, oh yeah, so our first project was a double-decker highway that just kind of streamlined kind of like mass transportation versus like trains and stuff like that in the highway of Texas, rather than having a lot of people commute from like Katy, Texas to Houston, that it takes like a whole hour, and people, you can't be on your phone, you can't be relaxing, but you still have to be there for an hour. So like some kind of like train system in Houston. So we kind of proposed that. We got first place the first year that we did this competition. I don't think it was a lot of money, but I think it was like $1,000 or so.
Oh, nice.
But like, and then the next year we also won. So like, it was almost like I was kind of testing the waters in this new environment, rather than kind of like sulking down in my feelings. It was just kind of happened. And I remember being really sad about it and crying, and then telling my, like, like coming down and like about to tell my parents that I failed and I won't be graduating with my twin sister. So that's kind of gonna make it very evident, right, that something had gone wrong in my career that kind of led to that. But I just kind of came down. I said, "Hey, I failed. Unfortunately, I have to stay in school longer. At this point, I'm paying for college myself, so thankfully, I'm not putting that burden on themselves. But at the same time, it's still something that I'm like, oh, I kind of wish that you were proud of me. But so I just kind of like started tearing up, and my mom was like, "Wait, you're still continuing? That's great." And I was like that almost brought me to more tears because it's almost like she reminded me. She's typically not like that. She had all A's in college.
Oh,
She's just like extraordinarily smart. My dad as well. So for her to remind myself of my own mindset just meant the world to me because I couldn't be there for myself when I most needed it. So
oh,
like her kind of changing
reflecting.
her perspective and
Yeah.
help and being kind to me was just like the world. So
Wow.
it just kind of was like after that we kind of just moved on. And when my family from Mexico came to Angie's graduation, we just kind of like it happens.
It happens.
Engineering kind of sucks sometimes. So
It does.
it's just about getting through it. And then once
Yeah.
I got to like, I mean, even when I was working concurrently with school, I mean, I just love my process engineering internship like so much that it
Oh,
just kind of like gave me something to look forward. And I think it also gave me hope that even though I was not the greatest student in the world, because I was just not book smart, I just practical and
yeah. Yeah.
so I just realized I was going to be more successful once I got out of college. So I just kind of kept looking towards the finish line and just
Just,
grind through it.
yeah. Interesting because it sounds very similar to the basketball team,
Yeah.
but maybe the stakes were a little higher, a little bit
Right.
different. It's all, you and your investment. So interesting and very nice to have that support from mom, just to
Yes.
remind you of basically, what maybe the approach that you would use or used in the past to reapply that in that situation.
For
So
sure.
cool. So now you're in the workforce and you eventually get through. Not only that, but very, very, I'll say wise during that time to use the time to get with the business classes and put yourself in those positions with other people that are going to elevate you, accelerate the opportunity in that time. So then how does that affect your career?
Yeah, so for sure. So I think once I was interviewing, I was really surprised. I didn't have a great, like, I had a decent GPA. I won't say it, but
Yeah.
I had a really decent GPA, higher than average, higher than the average company requires. And so I was not scared of that, but I also knew that in the totem pole in terms of grading system, I was probably not the highest one. So whenever I was over here going to career first and like introducing myself and kind of like getting that report, I just looked around. I kept getting a couple offers over here, and then some of the brightest 4.0 students that I were surrounded by me were not being as successful, and I was not lying about my lack of failures. I was not lying about that it took me a little longer. I was just being myself. And then I just saw that kind of how you presented yourself, the business acumen, the way that you illustrated your previous opportunities, and rather than being the victim, kind of really thriving in the this is what happened to me, this is what I did, and it was great. Like, thank you for that challenge to come into my life so that I could really test myself. So I do think
Wow.
that year and a half that I took extra just kind of changed how I behave and how I introduce myself. I mean, I remember my first process safety engineering consulting firm that I worked. I mean, I just remember, like, I think I look back and I'm like, I can't believe that I went from being nervous, and I don't know if anybody could hear me in that presentation. Like, I was just like
Oh,
super quiet. I think I stuttered and like my voice vibrated a bunch when I was like going through my presentation. I don't even know if I made sense. And then all like fast forward now, this year I spoke to like in 2 conferences, and then I'm like I guess I did a decent job, so they asked me to come back again for next year, right? So it's just about that kind of like incredible process that you're really frustrated in tears back then, but then it kind of all comes together. So I absolutely love my career. I started as a process engineer. Well, so I signed up for a rotational development program for my company, WestRock. So it was super cool. Every 8 months, I would rotate to a new place and a new title. So it was kind of like a accelerated leadership program at that point, because I started as a process engineer for 8 months. I did 2 Six Sigma projects, finished them, make sure that the team was aware that I was of my departure, and kind of like what the control systems were in place for it to sustain those results. And then I, even if it was not my job, I kind of like still call them, and I'm still friends with them, even though it's been 4 or 5 years since I started. And then I kind of moved on to Portland, Oregon, where I was a process improvement engineer. I work with the general manager there, who I love and I admire so much, Alma. And I was able to work with her and see how her brain thought about like overall logistics of how to run the plant. So that was just an incredible experience. But also, she gave me a lot of ownership. Like I was like, hey, I was in charge of waste and making sure that so like every time we produce boxes, there's trim. There's also every time you undo the rolls, like there's waste of that for shipment, and you want to take enough that it doesn't like stuck your machine, but not too much that you're wasting paper. It's a fine balance. So I did that, and that was incredible. Just because we reduced the waste like we were supposed to, we maintained the waste. 2 years later, we still had it, and I even got a job offer for that reason, because they were like, not only did you make an improvement, but that you kept that improvement, right?
Oh, wow.
But then, so I was really committed to this rotational program because I wanted to test all aspects of my company. So first, it was the paper mill, where we like literally make paper, but you make it in rolls, and then you make the boxes. So you make Amazon pizza, anything like that, boxes in this box plant. And then for my last one, I thought I would just go to corporate role. So funny enough, I did go to a corporate job, but not the one I thought. My boss kind of unfortunately, my boss left. The person that my hiring manager left for the rotational program, who we love, and thankfully he went to another company, so he's perfectly fine. But we were sad to see him leave. And unfortunately, he had such a good presence in our team that you could see that a lot of the things that he was doing kind of starting falling through the cracks. Not to the team's fault, but again, it's just one less person to do everything that he was doing. He was checking in with us and all that stuff. So I kind of started making a trail system of like what was the previous state, the current state, and what our future state could look like, and like maybe condensing some of the things that he was doing so that it would not take as much manpower to execute everything great, but still have a good program. And then we were also like, we were 2 months away from rotating to our next location, and we didn't know where we were going. So I kind of reached out. We had a conference with our company, and then I kind of reached out to the vice president of talent acquisition. I was like, hey, I see that we're no longer have my previous boss with us. I see our current state, I see the past state, and I think this is how we can achieve those gaps to make sure that we stay on track for the next class coming in and the next people that we're going to hire. So these are kind of this. I suggest that we document and any knowledge that the team has, and then kind of like divide and conquer. And this is something that the person that you're going to hire in the replacement is going to do. And then he was like, he wanted to have a series of calls with me, and I didn't understand why. I guess he was trying to get to know me, right? And then I was like, okay, sure. Like, I'm not going to say no to talk to the vice president of the talent.
Right.
I just learn from you everything I can. So sure. So we started setting up this calls, and but I started like losing my patience. I was like, sir, we need to act. Like, I don't like, I think I finally sent an email. I was like, sir, I know we're really busy. I know you're really busy. So I really love to know where we're going next. And he's like, well, that's interesting that you asked me, because I think you should come work with us. When do you start? No, I think he didn't even ask me. He didn't politely ask me if I wanted to work with him. I think he just said, when do you start? And I was like, oh, that's so funny, but no. And then he was like, no, like, when do you start? Can you start next week? And I was like, I mean, I have a house and I still need to move my stuff. And I was planning to rotate in the next month, 2 months, like I said. But I said, sure, I can be there next week, but I need like a week of hotels until I get my new place. And then I need to expedite my shipment so that it gets there on time. So he was like, yeah, do it. And so I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm leaving. And then at
Wow.
first I was really hesitant towards going to a talent acquisition role since it was, yes, I would have managerial experience that would be key in my future leadership or just development or even test the waters to see if I could be successful in the first place. So, and a lot of people said, no, you shouldn't do that. It's going to be risky to
Oh,
come back to engineering with it.
oh,
I just said, I asked the talent, I asked Jason, I said, hey, if I had struggled going back, would you back me up? Would you say that,
oh,
would you say that this
nice.
is part of the development program? Like, because I do think it'd be critical for my engineering skills to be complemented with the soft skills, but I
Nice.
just need like a little like support. I ended up working out perfectly. Nobody needed to tell, like
Do anything.
he needed to back me up, but he was ready. When I was
Nice.
looking for a new job, like for my permanent job, he was like, "What do you need? Like, what can I do?" Like, he's just incredible. But I was like,
Wow.
"Nope, I think we got it." Like, but I said, if I ever tell you, please step off. And I did ask him to like ask around just to make sure that the position I was like like the two positions I was interviewing for had good leaders, because
Oh,
I did think about that. So I did ask him on the side. So he kind
nice.
of recommended that, but it was just kind of one of those things that looking back, I think that's the best decision I did. I love
Oh,
my talent acquisition friends and just the skills. I'm actually really close to one of the people I met during that. So just super
oh.
happy that it kind of worked out the way it did, and then I took the risk.
Yeah, you took the risk. You asked the right questions at the right time to actually kind of like help at least the idea that I'm going to be supported here, either way. And I think that actually, when you do that, you actually create more support for yourself,
Right.
right? So it's actually kind of self-fulfilling. So interesting. So now your title is strategist, but the entire time you've been so strategic. Was that a natural thing for you? Did you know all along that being a strategist was your thing, or is it your thing, or?
Yeah, for sure. No, I think it's a lot of logic in my brain that executed a lot of things in my life. So I think in a way, yes, I am very logic in the sense of like, not that I don't think that you should go to be a librarian, study to be a librarian if that's really what your passion was. But for me, what was my end goal? Making sure that I have a sustainable life that I enjoy and that allows me to do the things that I enjoy, which is being outdoors. Even though I grew up, I still like to be outdoors and I start like to be playing. So climbing equipment is not cheap. Running equipment also not cheap. I've been talking about my husband. My husband was talking about his bonus coming up for next year, and I said, "Who cool? Can I get more running shoes?" And then he's like, "I don't think that's like the same range of stuff. Like we're getting a lot of money for my bonus, so I don't know why you just want shoes, but that was the first thing that came to mind. Like, I just want to have as many shoes as I want so that I can like rotate them and anything like that. But
Nice.
like,
Well, I think that's kind of important. And what you actually said was, you have this career, but really, the career also, allows you to live a life that you really enjoy.
right, exactly. So it's both. I love my role, and I think it was excellent for me. Actually, my two mentors, Chris and Mary Beth, both recommended me for a role. Unfortunately, Chris, he told me, I said haha, and then I never applied. And then a month later, Mary Beth refers me to the same role. I was like, okay, two people that I know me really well. Maybe I should listen. I just did. I was in a point that I was in innovation. I like that enough. I don't think it was meant for me necessarily because it was a lot of like doing the same things, doing the same things over and over, and changing a small little thing and then seeing what the results are. I think in theory that sounded really exciting to me, but in practice was not as exciting as I would have. I want to accept like my boss is great, no complaints there, but just not a character fit there. I needed to change everything at once or something exciting. But that did not seem safe. So I think just going back to that, that was not the right fit. So I already kind of knew that, but I was kind of in my head, I don't want to seem jumpy. I already went from a rotation every 8 months, and I don't know how to stay. So the only thing, the good thing that the rotation program, it taught me to be adaptable. But the another thing that it didn't tell me how to stay. So like, it didn't teach me how to stay put and not seek that constant change on completely different titles. So I was kind of forcing
Interesting.
myself. Yeah, I was kind of forcing myself in this one in innovation, being like, maybe this is not what you don't like, but you've been here longer than 8 months. Maybe you just gotten bored. So I was kind of testing that. But I think my mentors knew that I was really not testing that I just really needed to switch jobs. So
Yeah.
it was, again, it's kind of like community piece that
Yeah.
provides the insight that you need when you can't recognize that you're in
Right.
that.
Right.
So
When you're inside of it, yeah, you don't see.
yeah, so that was
Awesome.
great.
Awesome. So you've had really great support. You're still, going places, obviously, in your career. What would you like to see in the future, either for yourself or for other women leaders? Any insights into what the future may hold? When more people can overcome some obstacles like you did and be successful like you did as you show what's possible to the world.
Sure. I think I definitely love to see more women believe in themselves in the way that uh, I think one specific thing I talked to my boss that I feel very deeply about. My boss is incredible, so don't take this the wrong way. But we were in a meeting, and someone said something, and he basically said the same thing as his own idea, but not in a mean way. My boss is very visual, so there was no slides. We were just talking in teams. I know he's had like 16 plus meetings this day. He's just really tired. He's done with it, right? And then this person says something, and I said, John, oops, I just said his name, but John, thank you so much for rephrasing what uh, Fred said. But like, this is a guy to guy interruption. It was not a malicious attempt to
Yeah.
take his word for it. It was more so of a, sorry, I kind of drifted my mind, and I just said that. And once I kind of called him out on it, he was like, "Thank you so much for calling me out. I kind of missed that,
Ooh,
right?" But I do think that
nice.
sometimes women tend to try to bring the perspective of being a victim whenever
Yes.
dealing with situations. I'm not saying that it's not true. I have seen it happen, and I know it is true. But
Yes.
I also think that there's also a lack of self-awareness sometimes that needs to be brought into place to see if there's any truth to what happened, or if that just something that happens in the business place. People interrupt in meetings to each other all the time, and they're not
Yes.
men and women.
Right.
They're just people.
Yeah. And
So
people sometimes like just maybe reflect and reiterate, maybe not thinking, of just kind of evolving the idea or the discussion. And it's not meant to say, I didn't hear you and I'm not acknowledging you. I'm just
right,
iterating naturally. Right. So,
right. Yeah,
yeah,
so
nice
I do.
perspective.
Yeah, no, so I definitely think we could benefit a lot from seeing truth in what, yes, maybe you did get offended, maybe you did get interrupted, but don't take that so personally that you become sour.
Yeah.
Almost like I've seen a lot of people later in their careers. I mean, even some ask me, is like, do you feel like you're making less than your peers just because you're a woman? And I was like, I don't know. I would actually argue that I make more than my peers
Oh, nice.
because I am persuasive, and I ask what I want and I get it. Right.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily because I'm a woman, but maybe because you're a woman, you tend to negotiate less, and you tend to ask for less of what you want, and
Yeah.
less, like, right. So it's more of a character and an approach than it is gender. So
Yeah.
I find truth where it's truth, but really try hard to see if it's something that you can change an approach, and it's something that's controllable. And if it is not controllable, maybe you are in the wrong company. uh, that's
And
it.
there's yeah, and there's something you can do about it, and nothing
Right,
is static, and sometimes those exercises are just a natural form of progress, for personal progress and, for the greater good as well.
For sure. And also, like, I know, support your people and your women, and that them to be confident enough to, I know that I contribute enough value so that if my peers does something incredible, I'm like, Avery did an incredible dashboard, or we should leverage that. I reached out to someone that I reached out to Joanna this week. She had a dashboard that she made an app that basically takes like a database and makes it into a really like digestible and visual format that I was really like excited about. So I think she just came out of college, but she just did an incredible work for my company. So I set up a so I've messaged her. I was like, hey, would you mind like walking us through your workflow? Because I think for strategy team could leverage something like that for producing production data that is visible and that helps inform our executives, right? But she was like super excited for it, and I said I was going to invite a few people, so I didn't lie, but I invited like my boss's vice president of strategy and stuff like that because I don't feel like she's going to take my role away, rather than she's going to contribute more to what my capabilities are and kind of get my boss excited about what I can do when I'm out there looking for, right? So it's almost like, yes, I am giving her the ground to be visible and to celebrate her accomplishments, but I'm also in a way like surrounding myself with those really smart people so that people will want to keep me around, only because I'm going to find the best solutions and I'm going to be confident enough to leverage those. So, like I feel like good drives good. So if you have good intents and you want to do the best and you want to leverage the best, then there's nothing that could go wrong with it. And I think sometimes, since there's so few women in our organizations, that instead of we're lifting each other up, we're pushing each other down. Because I don't know what happens, but it just seems to happen more often than I would like. So I think I'm not concerned, I guess, about my future. I'm just going to continue on and continue doing, the job the best the way that I can, and just be excited for it. And I would lie to you if I knew what my role would be in the future, but hopefully director, vice president, something like that. So.
Yeah, the sky's the limit, right? Or not even anymore.
Well,
the sky's no longer
even the limit. We're the limit. We're our own limit.
Right. Awesome. So I definitely appreciate that. So I think, part of what you're saying is just, do the best that you can do, and always know too, that we're always part of a community, and, the best you can contribute is only going to elevate everyone over time, regardless. And leading by example is definitely a powerful thing to do in the world.
Absolutely.
Cool. So do you have an inspirational quote that you can share with the audience?
I do. I wrote it down just to make sure I wouldn't mess up. So courage does not mean you're not afraid. It means that you're doing something even though it scares you. So.
Ooh, pretty fitting.
That's Nelson Mandela.
That's a perfectly fitting quote based on many of the stories. And obviously you give us plenty of examples for that in real life. Eugenia, thank you so much for being on the show. This conversation was totally amazing. Appreciate all the really, really insightful and inspiring stories that you shared with us, and for being who you are. Where can people get in touch with you, and what would you like if anybody wants to get in touch with you?
Yeah, for sure. I'm always happy. As you see, I'm very extroverted. I love making new friends and also like supporting each other. So definitely, please, I think Maria's going to tag me in LinkedIn. So feel free to reach out in LinkedIn. I think that's the best way to contact each other. And if we do eventually need to like set up a call or like email, whatever it is, we can do so through messaging. So it might take me like a couple of days or so to get back to you, just prioritizing my work and my personal life as well. But I love making new friends. If you have any questions, if you need a new perspective, or you want to give me perspective or feedback, I love that. I love to hear it, and I love to meet you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was awesome. Coffee Time with Kauffman is the comfortable place to discuss women's leadership, because I am on a mission to help the world discover the truth about what women are capable of. When you are ready for a leadership mastery makeover, go to mariakaufman.com and click on Consult a Coach, where you can schedule time with me for an empowerment session. Have a great week. Enjoy your adventures and journey responsibly. And once again, Eugenia, thank you so much for being a guest on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.